Welcome, everyone, to the Better Than Rich show. I'm your host, Andrew Biggs, and I'm back with my co host, Mike Abramowitz. Mike, how are you this morning?
Feeling good. It's nice and dark and early here.
I know, right? The number of podcasts that we are recording before the sun comes up, I don't know if it's a record. It's probably not, but I feel like we're doing a pretty good job of these early morning broadcasts. But yeah, man, whereabouts in the country are you at now?
So right now I am in Savannah, Georgia.
Nice, nice. And you're traveling back from West Virginia?
Yeah, so we had my wife and I had a great time at the Greenbrier in West Virginia in White Sulphur Springs. Spent Thursday through Monday there, and then started driving back yesterday. So we did about 7 hours. Got to Savannah, Georgia. Got a nice king suite at the embassy, and then we'll
Nice.
finish the trek.
So the big question here, do you like road trips or not? Like, do you like driving like 7 hours in a
I,
day or no?
I don't mind driving.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I feel like I could listen to podcasts, listen to audiobooks, or if Lindsay's there, we just have conversation. Or sometimes
Right.
I get lost in thought. It's almost like calming
It's
sometimes.
therapeutic. All right. I agree. I agree. I'm a big fan of the road trip. So awesome, man. Well, hey, today we're going to talk all about addiction. We kind of have a list of topics here I'm excited to explore, whether it's technology addiction or addiction in other things, and different strategies that people can have. There's certainly people who would uh, espouse that you got to be addicted to something. Like, human beings are naturally addictive creatures. Before we dive into kind of the list of topics, let's talk a little bit about the origin of this topic coming up for us. Where's this coming from? Why are we talking about addiction this morning?
Well, I because I went on vacation, I totally like indulged. I indulged into gluttony. I indulged into
Mm,
gambling. I indulged into, I guess it would be the opposite of indulge. I don't know if that'd be divulge, but left my technology and social media. So um, I realized that it's it's very easy to settle into different behavioral patterns that if we allow ourselves to. So like I went to there was a little casino at the in the Greenbrier, and I went and got $500 cash. I was like, let me just play with 500. Lindsay had
mhm.
$20. She's not a gambler. I'm not really a gambler either, but I was like, I'm just, when in Rome, I'm going to go for it. So I took $500 cash out and went directly to the blackjack table, and I lost $250. It was $25 hands. So I lasted maybe 15 hands. So $250, boom, done.
Right.
And then another $250, and I never played craps before. So I was like, let me learn how to play craps. So I went to the table, no one was there. And the other 250 lasted me, I don't know, maybe 15 minutes. So I was out $500 in maybe 30 minutes, maybe maybe 40 minutes, and
Right.
she's playing the same $20 for like maybe an hour or whatever.
Hmm.
So I had a smile on my face the entire time. I was like, this is so fun, this is cool, like this is enjoyable. And I was like, I'm gonna go win it back. Like I could feel the feeling of
Mm-hmm.
the feelings of wanting to win this money back. So I was like, all right, um, I'll just come back tomorrow. So next day, get another $500 back and have $500 cash out. So now I'm at $1,000 that I took out. I was like, I'm not going to spend more than $1,000, but just the feeling of the thrill of then I tried roulette. I tried my roulette strategy that I learned in Vegas, and it was
Mm-hmm.
working. I made like $100, and then I went up like 200, then I was down 100, and then it was just like kind of going back and forth. But I felt the feelings of what someone might feel if they were a habitual gambler. Like
Mm-hmm.
I allowed myself to just go for it and just say, oh, I have more money, I have more money. Like feelings, the feelings of I was up, I got, I had $400 is what I left with out of the 1,000. So I lost
Mm-hmm.
600 for the weekend. And there was a piece of me that said, hey, you're willing to lose $1,000 anyway. Let's just take the 400 and bet it on black. Let's just see what happens. Or just go
Right.
one hand for blackjack and just see what happens. Like there was this feeling that was coming over me. And I could see why someone would get addicted to that feeling of uncertainty or thrill or what's next, or maybe I could get it back. So that was one feeling that showed up for me for gambling. The second one was eating. I overindulged with pizza and ice cream and lots of food. I mean, I'm talking chocolates to fudge to stuff I normally wouldn't eat. And then, like, that sugar addiction was so real. And carb. I mean, I would say I carb loaded this weekend for sure. And how easy it is to just not exercise and sleep in and just eat and gorge myself. And if it was comforting, like I was comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
I ate desserts and pastries and all these little cookies and stuff, but I didn't care. I was like, hey, it's on vacation, but I could easily see how someone could turn vacation into lifestyle.
Totally, totally. Well, I really appreciate where you're coming from, and I love this story and like the willingness to give us like the mechanisms that were going on in your brain as you are sitting down at the blackjack table, or going to the crafts table, or playing roulette, and watching these mechanisms at play. It's interesting that you bring up gambling, because so much of the way technology has been created these days really does mimic the gambler's rush, like the gambler's high, like always wanting to give someone another dopamine hit, like keeping them at the slot machine just long enough so they want to keep pressing the button, letting them win, every so often. And it is an interesting feeling that I think a lot of people are actually kind of habituated to. I've spent a lot of time with people, and certainly not everybody, but I've definitely seen a lot of young people who they just can't put their phone down, man. Like they just simply can't go even 10 minutes, even 5 minutes without checking their phone, without checking social media, without posting something or commenting. And sometimes it's I'm here to deliver leadership and value, and this person can't put their phone down, and they're talking to people on the internet when they're paying for my time. I'm like, hey, you came all the way here to the middle of Arkansas to spend some time in the Ozarks with me, and you're on your phone. What's the deal, right? Not only are you distracted, but you're paying money, and you're losing out on it. So it's like that. It's so strong though. And when I pointed it out to this individual, they had no clue. There was not even a shred of awareness that this was a habit that was almost instinctual for them. So, just starting off with that awareness, right? For you to even be able to describe what was going on at the casino. And I also love the fact that like you're like, yeah, I'm gonna embrace it while I'm on vacation, right? And also like that chapter's done, like back to work. But yeah, how can someone begin to awareness is a big theme for us so far through 10 episodes. Talk to me about how someone can develop more of that awareness. Just any thoughts, practices, habits. What are your thoughts there?
Well, the and we've already talked about this before, but by being in touch with myself, by knowing the real voice, I've labeled my different voices. I have the truth, and I have wimpy, I have shithead. So we've already kind of labeled some of these voices that I'm able to hear. And the truth is like the observer. So the truth is observing those mechanisms like you were talking about, but because I have a good relationship with that voice that's in my head called the truth was the one that said, hey, tomorrow, meaning last night, said, hey, you're going to be waking up and recording, so instead of watching TV, let's read a book. So I picked up the book last night because the truth is a very strong, I have a very strong relationship with that voice that's in my mind. Sometimes, wimpy is sometimes the one that's just like, oh, what are people gonna think? Or that one is there all the time too, questioning everything. And then there's shithead, which just wants to try to sabotage, just come in and try to sabotage everything at any point in time. I don't know if I necessarily have a label or a name for the one who kind of gets that immerses into this gambling or eating
Sure.
or gorging or whatnot. But it was very interesting to just be able to have like the truth. observe this immaturity, this version of me
Mm,
that's just like the kid in a candy shop. Like, I mean, I'm talking, I was eating just pieces of chocolate. They had a chocolate factory like inside the Greenbrier where a woman was talking about, how they make the chocolates from
mm-hmm,
scratch. And I was like,
mm-hmm.
awesome, let's go get a box. I was just like,
Right, right,
eating these
totally.
chocolates.
And this really like
Uh,
just points a little bit to, well, first off, like these dynamic tensions, in life. I was listening to one of my favorite thought leaders out there. If you haven't checked out Brett Weinstein, everyone listening needs to check him out. He has the Dark Horse podcast. It's really, really good, um, for uh, for a number of reasons. But he's a evolutionary biologist, and he was talking about how every um, system has these dynamic tensions, right? That balances, say, your pH or your body temperature, or even like, when you move your arm, right? It's opposing tensions that are moving it. And how, our we need to appreciate in our civil life, the dynamic tension between the left and the right and all these different things. And here it is again showing up, like this dynamic tension between the masculine and the feminine, right? The masculine's like, time to go to sleep, time to wake up, time to, read the book, like get to work, don't indulge. It's very focused and singularly focused. And then the feminine is like, hey, let's go enjoy, right? And if you don't have both, it life kind of sucks, right? Too much too much on the indulging side, and your life is really chaotic. It's a mess. You have all sorts of illnesses, and you're sore, and you're always tired, and your finances are a mess, and all these different things. If you're too much on the masculine side, though, like, all work and no play makes, Mike and Andrew dull boys. And it's just not exactly the sort of life that I think anyone wants to live. So I definitely want to point that out. Um, in touch with yourself, I think some people listening might think, oh, like, what does that even mean? Like, how do I get in touch with myself? And also, just to peel back the onion a little bit from what Mike was saying, uh, he said being the observer of your thoughts, right? So practicing watching your thoughts. So often we actually identify as the thoughts. I would say most of the time when we're going through our lives, we are our thoughts essentially, right? But even just implied in like, I think, right? Or I had this thought, it implies a separation already. And if you're willing to just simply look at it, um, and observe the thoughts that are coming up. And of course, it's a very interesting question. Where this is a very deep question. Um, the question is like, where do thoughts come from, right? We obviously, Carl Jung would be a really good resource to look into on this. But essentially, his theory would be, well, they just simply emerge, right? And so they emerge from the unconscious mind. And so it's like, okay, well, we need to be really, really careful, right? That we don't just get taken over by the unconscious mind. And next thing you know, we're actually slaves to our mind, rather than our minds being, we being the masters of the mind. So lots of really interesting things here in terms of awareness. Go ahead.
and yeah, one of the things I was just reading, I don't even know what book it was, but it says, what's the brain designed to do? Some people say
Mm,
the brain is designed to learn. No, 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 no. The brain is designed to survive, and it
mhm,
learns in order to survive. So with that being said, oftentimes, if we just are aware that our mind is like this tool that's just making sure that we are going to survive, just by understanding that, number one, that the thoughts that we have most of the time are not even our own thoughts. They're just the amygdala going into flight or fight, like protection, survival mode. That's number one. The second thing is, there, if you ever catch yourself saying a sentence that says, I can't believe myself, or I can't believe I did that. I can't believe I did that. So it's like, I is the person that is observing, and it's like, can't believe I is the one who did the action. So which one is I, which I is you? So just by catching just by catching yourself saying sentences like that. I was playing golf and I was saying things like, all right, we could do this, let's do this, we got this. Who? It's just me versus me. So it's like, by just catching myself saying things like that, I'm like, okay, that there's a couple voices in here. I got some roommates inside my head right now. And by just, again, being aware of that, it doesn't mean I'm crazy. It means I'm aware. Maybe I'm a little crazy, but it just means I'm aware that there are additional thoughts inside the mind. And just by understanding, like you said, Andrew, that we are not our thoughts, creating separation there peels back the curtain, or says, okay, cool, let me embrace this a little bit, and then I could honor it, I could be aware of it, I could disassociate from it, I can, wow, open up a whole new paradigm of how I could approach my life, and I could separate from addictions, and then I could actually parent myself. Then I can actually, take responsibility for different things and not just say, "Oh, that's how I am." No, no, no. That's how some of those thoughts are, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's how the behaviors have to be.
Right, right. And this is all in the effort of, you know, um, increasing your sovereignty. Like how much power do you have over your choices in life? And obviously, addiction is a complete loss of sovereignty, right? You have no choice but to obey the addiction, to obey, the command of the addiction. And so, obviously, that's not a great way to live. Quite literally, you are a slave to your addiction. So, um, and also understanding the mechanisms that are really, really strong, especially with how these things are being intentionally created to kind of hijack, right, the reward system of the brain. We were talking a little bit offline about the social dilemma. Obviously, it's a little bit of a hot topic, in general right now, with people kind of watching it, learning, kind of having the scales fall from their eyes in terms of how social media is impacting the world, how it's impacting mental health, how it's impacting the family, all of these different things. Um, you had a little bit of an interesting take that I thought was unique compared to many. So, what was your take on the social dilemma, and your thoughts about how these tech companies are using technology to, in some ways, create addictions? Talk to me a little bit. What's coming up for you on that?
So I want to first say that I did enjoy the documentary, and I thought it was
Mm,
well done, and I believe wholeheartedly that that especially Gen Zers have been dealt a tough hand because of technology. Like, I don't know how I would have fared being who I was with this era of social media. Like, I don't know how I would have done that, being bullied and just like all of that. Like, you can't leave it behind. You get in a fight and you lose a fist fight. And there was a few of those I had in my day. It's not just, it doesn't leave the next day. It's not like, oh, next day in middle school, everyone forgot about it. It's like, no, it has a million views on YouTube. And it's like, you can't
mm,
leave behind um the stuff that I would that are in our age we were able to just leave behind. So there is
mhm,
definite challenge there, especially for a lot of young people, to make sure that their reputation is strong and make sure that they have this facade that's there. So I 100% agree with that. The part that I didn't agree with the documentary, that I think everyone else might have missed, was it almost gave us permission to not take responsibility for our own actions. It doesn't it's saying that, like, there was one scene in in the movie, I guess we could call it, where the little girl breaks open the plastic container with her cell phone so she can go get the cell phone. And the immediate thought in my mind is like, yes, she has an addiction to her cell phone. I have an addiction to my cell phone too. Shoot, like this week when I said no phone, I still was like, all right, I'll check it once a day. It was like there was still this piece
sure.
of me that's like, all right, I gotta at least look at it once a day. So it's better than 200, but I still, there was that piece of me. But that is not the little girl's responsibility. I mean, this girl's what, 12 years old? That is a parent responsibility. So if I'm watching this, I'm thinking, yes, there is this strong addiction of the girl, and then she like feels awkward about her ears and stuff. That is mom's responsibility. That is dad's responsibility to parent that kid and not point fingers and say, oh, this big social media company, this big tech company, these ads are controlling the mind of my kid. No, 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 no. You need to take responsibility for parenting your kid. That's the first thing that showed up for me. The second thing that showed up
Mm,
for me is understanding business. I mean, these tech companies and the social media companies, it's supply and demand. I mean, their job is to create problems and solve problems, and we're using their platforms. In most cases, are free. So if you want to connect with if I want to connect with my family up in New Jersey, I'm using a free platform that someone else created, that is their business that they created. And if they want to use that, and I'm using their service and they want to use that to sell me stuff, that's their absolute right to do. And it's just like if I'm entering a store and they have certain restrictions or policies in that store, well, that's their right as an independent business owner to choose how they want to operate their business. Um, so I feel that, yes, could there be a social responsibility of these companies to like, make sure that they're doing legit work and help make our society better? Of course, there could be a social responsibility there. There should be a moral compass there. But I do believe that we need to take responsibility and parent ourselves and not say, oh, they're supposed to, you know, take care of us. They're supposed to make sure that I'm believing a certain thing, or I don't know. I think it gave too much permission to the average person that's watching it to say, that's why I do this stuff. Oh, it's not even my fault. It's not even me. It's not my kid. It's not, and it just gives us a chance to escape the responsibility there. That's how I received it. I even talked about this, by the way, Andrew, openly, because I feel like I had a few conversations and I had a few people say, oh, I didn't really think of it in those terms. And I'm like, great. So I don't know if I really want to talk about this openly because I might get ridiculed for thinking differently or something. So I was like, that was Wimpy. Wimpy was
yeah,
showing. I was like,
yeah.
ooh, maybe we should just like not talk about this. But
Yeah. Well, the truth is, we need people to think differently right now more than ever. I think that a lot of people do kind of succumb to just standard operating procedure. You're given a list of beliefs, and it's like, hey, here's the dogma of the day. Like, this is what you have to believe. You have to believe that big tech is out to get you. You have to believe that you're not responsible. You're a victim. You're oppressed. All these different things. It's like, well, what if you challenge those assumptions, right? Because part of the story is like, if I wanted to be a victim, I could be a victim, right? If you wanted to play victim, you could play victim. Anybody on the planet could choose to play victim, and it's like, well, at a certain point, we got to start drawing distinctions between truly oppressed people and people who maybe just have had a little bit of a tougher hand, and we got to like make sure that we're good to go there. And that's a larger discussion. Right. At some point, maybe we'll have it on this podcast, this idea and this culture of victimhood. But I mean, that's essentially one of the things you're bringing up here is like, oh, I'm a victim to, these modern forces. And the deck is stacked against me. And it's like, well, yeah, the deck is kind of stacked against you. And also that's called, so what is really the response to that. It's like your job to be aware that these technologies are attempting to come in and disrupt your sovereignty and make decisions for you. And then, it's your job to respond appropriately. If that means, going off social media, cold turkey, completely, then do that. If it's some sort of middle approach, great. If it's taking, strategic breaks like Mike did, I've seen a lot of people say, hey, I'm taking 10 days off. I'm taking 15 days off. I'm taking a month off. I think that's really, really cool. In fact, Mike Dowd in the chat right now just said, hey, I took a 2-week break and it was crazy how much free time I had, right? It's like, yes, that's what we're talking about. It's like, got done important stuff. Like, read a book, like practice the guitar, like all of these things that you could do what you could learn, where you could travel, who you could spend time with, conversations you could have that you're missing out on. Um, is what your the opportunity cost of being addicted to these technologies really is. So to go to parenting, totally agree with you on that point, right? It does raise an interesting question for the fathers and mothers, watching and listening here today. Um, what is the proper use of technology for your children? It is a very, very powerful force, and just you if you don't have a strategy, you're gonna lose, right? You have to have some sort of strategy for how you're gonna parent your kids with technology. Jonathan Haidt, who was in the documentary and also somebody that I like to follow, before this documentary came out, he has some really great books. The Coddling of the American Mind is one I would recommend everyone read. And it's all about great intentions and bad results on parenting, particularly for Gen Z. But he says basically like all of these suicides and mental health issues started spiking right around 2010, 2011, when this social media stuff became ubiquitous. And there's a lot of research to suggest that those are directly correlated. So you got to be paying attention to what your kids are doing online, and take responsibility for it. Generally speaking, probably, especially for girls, they probably shouldn't have social media at least until high school, and that's probably going to be an unpopular choice. And you're probably going to be, they're probably going to be pissed off that they're not getting social media and all their friends have it. But them being healthy individuals, well-rounded individuals with a good solid head on their shoulders, for later in life, will pay off in spades later, even if they hate you for a few years. That's my take. What's your take, Mike? What's coming up for you on your end?
It's very easy for me to I don't want to say judge, but just to point out awarenesses that I see, because I'm not a parent yet. I'm excited to be one, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of mess ups along the way. It's going to be a huge mess, and it's going to be like, oh, that's why those parents have done that. That's why I saw them do this. And I like to be an observer. And I'll give you an example. At the Greenbrier, there was a movie theater, and Lindsay and I went and watched a movie. It was called Coco, Disney movie, and in the theater was a mom and a daughter. It seemed like she was waiting for the dad to come in, and the little girl must have been 3 or 4 years old, and she was walking seat to seat, just like all over the movie theater. She came right in front of Lindsay and I, like, hi, like super adorable. This girl was super adorable. And like Lindsay and I looked at each other as like, wow, she's like really, right here, right there in front of us. There's a whole movie theater, right? And super friendly. But I look at the mom, and the mom is on her cell phone. Now, granted, the first thing that goes to my mind is like, okay, maybe she's reaching out to the dad or whatever. But then the girl runs around the front of the movie theater and goes to like one of the chairs, sees candy on one of the seats, and starts eating candy from this movie theater that who knows how long it's been there. And she comes back to her mom and taps her mom, and her mom is just immersed in her cell phone. Whatever was going on that cell phone was more important in that moment than what was happening with her 3-year-old kid that's in the movie theater. And she's eating this candy. Her mom was like, "Where'd you get that?" She's like, "I found it." And then her mom, it was almost like this, like, on switch. The on switch goes on. It's like mom mode goes back. It's like, give me that. That's disgusting. Don't do that. But that's just it's very, again, easy for me to observe because I'm not in it. Who knows what was going on in that phone conversation? I made up my own story happening in my head. But the fact is that 3-year-old is not mature enough to parent it herself. She needs to have a parent there. However, an 18-year-old, a 19-year-old, a 20-year-old does have the maturity and the intellectual capacity to parent themselves. Like an 18-year-old knows that, okay, I'm not going to go eat the candy off the thing. And maybe it's not eat the candy off the floor. Maybe for the 18-year-old, it's something as insignificant as I should do my homework before I turn on the TV. I should say no to certain things and say yes to other things. I shouldn't settle into temptation even though it feels good. I shouldn't cheat on my significant other even though it might feel good in the moment. Like there is the ability to parent ourselves. The addictions with video games, porn, you know, alcohol, drugs, TV, Netflix, binge watching. I mean, it is very easy to settle into those things. So for a kid, yes, to your point, parenting of your child, but I also want to make sure that we mention parenting of ourselves. Mel Robbins has that very popular TED talk about the 5-second rule, and she talks about parenting yourself. And I 100% agree with that principle that when you get to that age where you are mature enough to parent yourself, you don't have to be reliant on mom and dad anymore. You need to be able to understand that your parents raised you to this point, and then that's it. Their job is done. You need to take responsibility for yourself. Ability to respond, ability to respond. That's my, I know it's my little rant there, but
I love it. I love it, man. I love it. So Mike Dowd, by the way, welcome, Mr. Dowd. It's good to have you in the chat here. He asked the question: how do you find balance, right, between family, friendship, connection, as well as, a lot of us use social media honestly for business, right? Um, I'll kind of speak to this, and I'll kick it to you. One of the shifts that I had to make just mentally, because I was actually like kind of antisocial on social media for a long time, because it was like the only way I couldn't, get addicted was like to just essentially ignore it, or I would just be on it and not be engaged, or I would just like be like this, like the creep, like just scrolling and like reading and observing, but not actually engaging, because I just didn't want to get like sucked in. I understood the excuse me, the power of that. But one of the things, at least from a business perspective, one of the shifts that I encourage everyone to think about is, you could be the consumer or you can be the producer. And, one of the shifts I had to make was, okay, if I'm going to engage here, I'm going to be the producer of the conversation. I'm going to be the producer of the content. I'm going to be somebody who's actually adding value that other people are consuming. And I'm going to use this platform and this distribution network as a tool. So just really practically and simply from a business perspective, when I get on social media, not all the time, right? I don't want to give myself a perfect score on this by any means, but when I get on social media, I'm getting on for business purposes to engage with my audience, to engage and serve their needs, right? And meet their needs. And it's one of the tools you can use. So that's one thing I would say. The other thing around balance is just quite frankly paying attention, right? And just watching how often are you just mindlessly scrolling, and how often are you, actually looking intentionally for something to engage with. This is why I honestly prefer YouTube to a lot of other platforms. I know we're streaming live here on Facebook, but we do post these on YouTube. And the reason I like that is I pay for the premium, so I never see any ads. And then, I can watch long form content that really keeps my attention. It's another thing with podcasts, right? And it kind of fights against that sort of like quick hitting, like 60 seconds or less sort of attention span that people say we have. Most of the podcasts that I listen to are an hour or longer. Sometimes it's like 3-4 hours long. I'm watching a podcast with Rogan or something like that. And it trains your attention in a different way. And even though it's still social media. So I don't know if I have all the answers, Mike, Mr. Dowd here in the chat, but we're trying to figure it out here. Mike, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree 100% with what you said, which is be the producer. I like what you said, the producer versus the consumer. I never thought of it in those terms, but that is how I approach or attempt to approach social media, where it's like usually, not all the time, but usually when I'll go in there, like you said, I don't give myself a perfect score because I don't either. But usually when I go on there, it's to post something versus to go receive something. So it's to go put out some sort of content, or check and see how some of the content I've already put out is faring. And then if I feel like I need to engage, then it's go and like and comment and stuff, just to kind of play the algorithm. Now, in the process of liking and commenting or whatever, that's where the vortex can kind of suck me in a little bit. But a couple of boundaries that I created for myself is I will not look at social media before I start my day. So during my morning routine, I absolutely refuse. I started this, I don't even know when, but I refuse to start getting my mind influenced by social media before I am able to release yesterday and be able to get a clear head for today. So, like, I want to make sure that I'm not just stacking more thoughts onto the thoughts that I haven't released yet. So that's one way that has served me to be able to find a little bit of that balance in my life. So a couple of things that have been helpful to offset that as a tool is instead of keeping my phone on all night, I put it on airplane mode. So therefore, I have no notifications on my phone. So I have no notifications, and I have my phone on airplane mode. So when I wake up in the morning, there's no temptation because I don't see any notifications at all. So the first thing I look at on my phone, it's in airplane mode, so I shut the alarm off. Then I'll be able to I'll go to my phone, and I always use my phone. I have it because I have my affirmations on my phone. So I have on my Excel spreadsheet, Google Sheets, but it's downloaded to my phone. So instead of you going online where I would have to, then I have access to social media, I go to Google Sheets, it's downloaded on my phone, and it has all my affirmations on there, and it has all my goals on there. And it has my like my 5-year goals, my 30-day goals, my 1-year goals, my everyday goals, along with my core values and my purpose statements for this year. So I've been doing that for a couple of years now, and I just look at that. So that's the first thing I'm looking at. So if I look at my phone, I'm looking at my affirmations, I'm looking at my goals, I'm looking at my core values, my purpose statement, and just getting that in my mind first. Then of course I'll typically, I know we talked about this one, like morning routines and whatnot. It's just like stillness, just sit with myself for just a little bit, see where my thoughts are at, just kind of feel where my breath is. Is it shallow? Is it deep? Am I tired? Am I fatigued? Like, just seeing where I'm at. Okay, so I'll feed my mind a little bit, give myself a little space to kind of check in, and then sometimes I'll go to my planner, sometimes I'll go to my journal, sometimes I'll go to um you know I'll use my WhatsApp, but specifically that's business, just to see, just to check in with my staff, but more so to communicate. It's an outgoing communication that needs to be sent out. And then after I'm done with that, then I'll go check in social media after I feel like I've already set my day. So I'll make sure. I think the mornings are really critical, and same thing with the evenings. I typically will not allow myself to look at that social media right before bed, because then it influences my mind at nighttime, and it doesn't really sit well. So again, I try to create those boundaries in the morning, try to create those boundaries in the evening, and then like throughout the day. Kind of like what you said, if I'm scrolling or like, in that vortex, it's just being aware. If you're not aware, it's the habitual addiction. But if you're aware, it's like, can I interrupt this pattern right now? Is this serving me? Is this aligned with my goals? Is this helping or hurting? And just like, if I'm aware, then I could interrupt the pattern. If I'm not aware, well, I'm heavily habitual into the addiction and I'm not aware, so I can't do anything about it. But if I'm aware, I can choose consciously a different path. I could choose a different direction. I could choose to put my phone away. And to Mike Dowit's point, it's like, how do you find that balance, especially if you're with a partner who's also addicted to their social media or addicted to their phone? um, I have to do my best to show up for myself, but also for my partner, for my wife. So therefore, I'll intentionally make sure that I'm not on my phone. That doesn't, and now I'm not going to play martyr and say, I'm not on my phone, so you need to be off your phone, but I'm going to demonstrate what it feels like and looks like to not be disengaged on my phone. And therefore, I create the space for my partner to do the same if she consciously wants to choose to do that. And it was really beautiful because yesterday she said, I chose not to check my email on this car ride. And she's like, it was tough. It's going to set me back for tomorrow, but I chose not to because I want to be present. I said, oh my God, I love you. So, so you
That's
can,
amazing.
you can create that space.
That's some really good leadership too. And I also love that it's not like a contest between you two, right? Because I could see some couples being like, yeah, like I spend less time on my phone than you. And, it turns into the blame game. Um, just speaking to one thing that I see a lot of people need from social media is this term validation, is what I wrote down. And it's like you're posting. And then I definitely felt this when I first started posting a lot. It was like, my self-worth was tied in with like how many views we got, right? Or like how many likes it got, or how many comments it got. And it's like, ooh, what a dangerous game, we're playing there. So just finding your self-worth, intrinsically. I was talking with somebody yesterday. I was like, hey, do you have intrinsic self-worth? And they were like, I want to say yes, but honestly, most of the time I don't feel that. I feel like, my performance is what gives me a value. And so just, finding that intrinsic self-worth that like, whether, you're religious or not, but like looking at it from the God's perspective and like seeing yourself as this like child of God or this child of the universe that's like handcrafted and like you have as much value as every other human being. It's not just your human capital value that you can add to the capitalist marketplace that makes you valuable. What makes you valuable is the fact that you're a human being. So I made a list here of all the things that people can get addicted to: drugs, alcohol, porn, sleep, TV, social media, fast food, sugar, gambling, sports, Adderall, Xanax, video games. I'm sure there's more. At the end of the day, addiction, when it comes down to, is a coping mechanism, right? It's a strategy to help us not have to face some of the emotions that are underlying, our lives and kind of like underscoring our lives. And it's just a way for us not to have to face certain things. And if we are willing to look at these coping mechanisms and see them for what they are, and be willing to just get a little uncomfortable, right? Because one of the things we're doing a good job outlining the problem here, but sometimes people are like, well, what am I supposed to do about this? And one thing you just have to be willing to do, no matter what it is that I just listed that you're addicted to, or somewhat addicted to, be willing to sit and be uncomfortable for a while. Be willing to sit and be bored even. Be willing to sit and like, think and feel and, reflect and just be with yourself. And I see this, so many people are just overwhelmed by their own consciousness that they can't sit and observe themselves even for a little bit. So that'd be my recommendation, is to sit and think. The only other thing I would just say is, choices. It comes down to choices. You were talking about indulging this weekend. You're really open about that. I really appreciate it. I think we can all relate. And then also you said, hey, last night it was like, I'm going to read a book, get back into go mode, right? And just making a different choice. What else is coming up for you, Mike? Any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I was just talking to someone. I listened to Phil Mickelson on the Ed Milet podcast, and he talked about golf has been his addiction. He said some people gamble, some people do drugs, some people drink. He's like, golf became my addiction. And he said it's a positive addiction. It's not a bad addiction. It's a positive one. It's made me a lot of money and it's made me a lot of friends and got me a lot of fame. It's a positive addiction, but it is an addiction. And I think it's important to know, like, sometimes addictions could be serving. They could serve us. They could be, we could call them positive distractions. There are positive distractions. There's no doubt about it. I also think that even so, even though it's a positive distraction, even though it's creating a positive gain, it's still important to be aware of it. Because without anything, there's always going to be a compromise. He even said, like, there was points in time where, it could have affected his relationship or his marriage or his parenting, because it was an addiction. It was a positive addiction, but it still had a cost. So it's still the awareness, which is important, but we can replace it. Like, I was obsessed with NFL football, like Miami Dolphins, like, oh my gosh, like, oh, big Miami Dolphin fan. I'm still a Miami Dolphin fan, but something clicked recently. It might have been because the Miami Dolphins haven't been good. That's possibly, but I think it was more so, I was listening to podcasts, I was listening to Ed Milet, and he said, anytime a grown man can yell and scream at a TV about someone that is not doing something well or doing something well with another grown man's name across his back, that grown man is getting paid regardless. Like, that person is getting paid whether they suck or they don't suck. And you're getting frantically emotional about a game that you are not tied to at all whatsoever. And I I know in the past how many times I would get emotionally triggered when the Dolphins made a great play or they did a bad play or whatever. And I had my Marino jersey on and I'm celebrating a dude that doesn't even play the game anymore,
Mm-hmm, hmm.
celebrating a team, or, not even celebrating, the opposite of that, when they mess up. But I would allow myself to get emotionally engaged and involved in something that had nothing to do with me. And when I had that awareness, I said, holy shit, I'm addicted to this. Like, this doesn't serve me. I want to give this energy to something else.
Right.
Not that that's bad, but it wasn't very helpful to a lot of my goals. And that was probably about 15 months ago. I had that revelation.
Nice.
And it's been very serving for me. And I'm not saying to anyone who watches, sports that, hey, just be aware, but I do think that there is some merit to understanding there are positive distractions and then there are distractions.
Totally. Totally. Um, excuse me. One of the things that I'll just bring up here is we tend to get in cycles, right? And we tend to our minds are really good at patterns, habits, right? Human beings are really good at that, and I love the work. I think it was John Lewis is his name, and then there's another guy, John Vervaeke, has done some really good stuff on this, and they call it basically it's like a reciprocal narrowing where it's like this spiral of negative choices where like your choices continually get more and more narrow. And to kind of outline that, I'll just bring this up on the screen here. This is called the 9 dot problem. And so it's a really looks like it's an easy problem. Basically what we need to do is connect all the dots, all 9 dots. And by the way, if you're listening, it's just a 3x3, 3 rows of 3. If you're listening back on audio, you can also go look this up on YouTube and search it back. But basically, the idea is you need to connect all the dots with 4 lines, right? So now, like, Mike, this is the first time I'm throwing this at you. So you can start to think like, okay, how would I do it? You get 4 lines. You have to end, each line. It's not like you can pick up the pen. So, you start to look at it. It looks really easy. It's like, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, nope, that didn't work. Okay, let me try going through the middle. Oh, that didn't work. We missed some of the dots. And, it actually turns out to be a really tough problem for people to solve. And, it's not an easy problem because our minds are really good at adapting or having patterns, right? And so when we see dots, we connect the dots in a certain way. So I'm going to bring up the solution to the problem here. And you can now see the problem is a little different. The 9 dots are there, but literally you go outside of the box. And to solve this problem, right? You start in the corner and then you have to go outside the box to solve this. Now, sometimes people say, hey, that's against the rules. It's like there weren't any rules that said you couldn't do that. You've connected all the dots using 4 lines. But our minds have a very hard time thinking outside the box, especially when we see a pattern, right? And so a lot of times when we're addicted to something, what we need to do is just make a different choice, right? Instead of pouring yourself a drink tonight, what if you just went on a walk? Instead of picking up the phone, what if you picked up a book? Instead of, ordering the burger, what if you ordered the salad? I know this sounds really simple, but it's just one choice, one intentional choice that oftentimes can break that pattern and start to create a new one that can turn into that positive, addiction that Mike is talking about. So thinking outside the box, breaking the pattern, and basically what that creates, what the research finds is that it creates this reciprocal widening of choices and like this options, right? It creates choice sovereignty where you can really choose the life you want to live, and it turns into a positive spiral. So, Mike, any thoughts on this? And then I know we got to start heading for the exit. So, any final thoughts before we depart for the day?
Yeah, I love what you just said, that you make the choice and those choices will end up becoming patterns. And those patterns, what happens, that's where self-confidence comes from. When you can create self-confidence in your own ability to respond and to be able to parent yourself. And that's where it comes from, is those small little incremental choices. So I would suggest position yourself to win. So if we know podcasts could feed our minds more so than music, then make an agreement with yourself. I won't listen to music until I listen to 10 minutes of podcasts. If you know books feed your mind more so than TV, then it's like surround your house with books, and you can't turn on the TV until you read 5 pages from a book. And you just set yourself up to win. If you know there are certain apps on your phone that serve you and others that don't, then it's like I can't open that Facebook app until I open up the gratitude app. Or Breakthrough University with Tony Robbins, or whatever it might be. It's like you just make agreements with yourself and position yourself to make those choices. Like, for example, with the food, it's like if you really want that burger, it's like I'll eat the burger, but I'm going to eat the salad first. And if I still want the burger after I eat the salad, because I know the salad's going to serve my body a little bit better, and I still want the burger, I'm still going to eat the burger, but I'm just going to eat the salad first. I still might open up Facebook, but I'm going to open up gratitude app first. I still might watch TV, but I'm going to read the book first. I still might listen to music, but I'm going to listen to podcasts first. And at least position yourself to win with those small conscious choices, would be my suggestion.
Awesome. We got some really good stuff here today. I hope everyone has enjoyed it. Thank you so much for joining. I will let you guys go. And remember on your journey to becoming better than rich, to leave today better than you found it. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye.